everyone, this is Amy at AMYJOY Studios, and I wanted to share a little project with you today. This was inspired by a couple of different painters who I saw online, and I'll link their videos below. But I wanted to create an abstract background. Lots of times I like working on mixed media projects, and I'm sometimes stumped for how to do a background. So I thought this would be fun to share this with you. And so what I'm using are a few different acrylic paints. I picked out some matte acrylic paints. I found those very easy to work with when you are layering lots of different types of media. The matte paints tend to allow different types of markers. Markers will tend to work a little better with them, as well as colored pencil. And so I took a sheet of watercolor paper, and it's 140-pound cold press watercolor paper, and I put a layer of gesso over it. And now I'm using a flat brush to paint this sort of periwinkle background. And what's nice about having a solid color background to this technique is that it will peek through once you start layering other colors over it. And one really fun thing to do if you're trying to kind of pick out colors that you're going to use that you think will work well together is to go on Pinterest and just search color schemes or color palettes, and they'll come up with some really cool images with little strips of colors, and it'll show you which ones work really well together, and I'll teach you a little bit about color theory. So I went ahead and let that first layer dry completely, and luckily with acrylic paints they don't take long to dry, but if you were in a hurry you could set it in front of a fan or use a heat tool. And now I'm going to be layering a sort of salmon pink color with that same flat brush on top. And for this part, you'll see I'm turning my hand both ways so that you're getting these little patterns that go in different directions, and it creates this really neat blocky texture. And I learned this one from one of the videos that I'll be linking below. I learned this technique, and in her video she was actually showing how to do a Van Gogh type background, and that's not exactly what I'm doing here. Although if you're interested in seeing that technique, I would definitely check out her video, and I'm planning on uploading a similar video here on my channel to show that technique as well, because I really love the look of his backgrounds too. So now I'm just using a white acrylic paint, and I didn't rinse off my brush or anything. I just left a little bit of the pink in it because I knew I was going to be blending some colors. And now I'm just dabbing on some of the white and using that same block technique and letting it kind of mingle in with the pink, and letting some areas stay more white and some a little bit more translucent. And I wanted to mention, if you try out this technique, it is so relaxing. I really noticed that as I was doing this project, that I felt like I could have done it all day, and it was such a stress reliever. So I can understand now why people do abstract art. So I just kind of continue to go back and forth, and if your paint that you have out on your palette, if it dries a little bit, it's a good idea to keep a little water bottle handy that you can spritz your paint with and reactivate it a little bit. Acrylics, you can extend them with a gel medium as well. That'll keep them wet longer. But in this case, and since you're seeing most of this in real time, I didn't really have any problems with the paint drying up too fast on the tile there that I have it on. And it helped too that between colors, I often would put the brush back into my water little pot that I had off to the side there, and that kind of helps keep the paint moist, and you can kind of thin out acrylics and use them almost like a watercolor. And so that was another thing that I really like about this abstracty look, is you get a lot of different sort of textures and looks just because of the consistency of the paint, how much paint you have on your brush, and how much water is added. And it just feels really easy and fun, and almost like being a kid again when you were getting into finger paints or something like that. Usually when I'm doing some type of mixed media painting, I'm so focused because I have a particular subject that I want to paint, like an animal or a person. And so doing this really fun, freeing technique was a real departure from what I usually do. So it felt really liberating. I definitely recommend it. So this color is called Amethyst, and it's sort of a pale purple. And I thought it would look nice with these other colors. And I've learned to not pour out as much paint as I used to at one time, and I just figure, you know, pouring out a little bit less rather than more is better, because a lot of times I end up wasting paint that way. It's pretty much when it's out on the palette, unless you want to, you know, scoop it back into the bottle, but then sometimes it's half dried. You're kind of, you know, with acrylic paints, it's not like oils or watercolors where you can get them going again. With the acrylics, once it's out of the bottle, it's a good idea to use it. So I've been using it more sparingly as far as how much I will pour out at a time. So I like kind of this muted look of the pale lavender color, and I wanted to mention that 2 or 3 of the bottles I was using are by Blick, and they're called matte acrylics. I'd been wanting to try them for a while, and I really like them. They actually were having a sale on them at the Blick store that we have here in Arizona, and if you have a chance, I saw they were available online too. They're pretty affordable as far as a craft acrylic paint goes, and they perform really well, especially if you're on a budget and you want something that is, you know, a higher quality, maybe student grade paint. So at this stage, I'm using a little sponge dauber, and I believe I got that at Hobby Lobby. And I'm just using a really pale mint green color and using different amounts of pressure, because you can store a lot of paint into the sponge and then you can dab it on just however much you want. If you want a big splotch of color or just like a little kind of hazy look, you can do either one. And so you can see that very first layer that you add, where the periwinkle is in the background, you can still definitely see it. And so now I'm just going back over with some of that same pale mint green and just brushing on, first doing a little bit of the blocking technique, and then with some of the more watered down mint green, I thought it would be nice to just paint little strips here and there, not use the block technique completely. So you'll see that here, just very lightly brushing a little bit of that color over, and it sort of softens the overall look. And I like how it came out. I think this will make a really nice background for some type of maybe a nature scene. You could add flowers. And so I think what I will do next with this one is to figure out what I'd like to paint on top of it, and I'll definitely upload that video when that one's finished too. But I hope you've enjoyed watching this process and that you'll try it, and let me know what you think down in the comments, or if you have any questions or requests. I would love to hear them, and I will see you next time.